Hey, this is Trav here, and this podcast relies on the good people who help support this podcast on Patreon, and I'd like to give a big thank you to Bill, Bree, Brendan, Grant, Lisa, Mog, Dan, and Paula. Thank you so much, and here's the show. Hey, welcome to episode 177 of Touch on the Mind Boat, the slow-moving boat ride inside the Never Never land of my mind. This is Trav Nash speaking, and thank you very much for listening to this episode. I really do appreciate it. Today's show is a little bit completely unscripted, just my thoughts and how affected I am by the tremendous amounts of unnecessary violence that appears to be in the States, and just people's ridiculous reactions to it, and it would be the best thing I can do, trying to work it out in my head. So it's something a little bit different. It's a good show, and all you need to do is sit back, relax, think about a better world as we set sail. It's troubling to me, the ridiculous amounts of people that have been so maliciously slaughtered lately, especially in America in lines of these tragic events, and the blame that's been simplified as why these things are happening. Because the first question you would answer yourself in a reasonably civil society is, why is this happening? And I can't believe that people aren't surprised. We have a ridiculous history of war and violence, of slaughtering of innocent people for political gain, to send a message to an opposing force or enemy, filling ditches of dead bodies just because of their race, religion, colour of their skin. It's just been going on for years and years. And you think history would be the teacher here. You think after World War II, one of the biggest wars, and the atrocities of dropping a nuclear bomb on an island that is still suffering from radiation, that might have woken us up. But the real problem here is profit. As long as people are making money, there's no such thing as morals or doing the right thing. And that's what the real core of this is selling guns, making guns, and perpetuating fear. They want you to fear walking down the street. They want you to fear the person coming up towards you. They're telling you that you should arm yourself, and it's your right to arm yourself. And then people cite the fact that this is what the foundation of their country is based on. And I'm pretty sure the native people of America, the Native American Indians, they were there before them. And to sell America was always told that it was this land of opportunities, which encouraged a lot of immigrants. On the Statue of Liberty, apparently, it says it welcomes anybody into its harbour to make that country a better country, to actually be that number one best country in the world that people chant together in strange mobs of hive-mindedness. But it's not. I mean, statistically, you can look up the gun violence, and America is number one. And it's supposed to be a civil society. It's not at war, but it is technically at war with itself. For a few people that want to become president, for a few people with agendas who want to change basic human rights. Those few people that profit off it are the ones that are reaping this wave of new violence. People with mental illnesses have extremely easy opportunities to obtain guns, and all they need is a slight push, especially with this racist diatribe that's still floating around. It's these people that go to these events and slaughter innocent people. I don't think anyone deserves to die. But the people that are the villains of this world go free. They're the ones that don't go to jail. are never punished for their actions. The real culprits are too smart. They hide among the many and they pretend to be normal. And this is what we've come to. And I don't know why we question it. I don't know why it's so surprising, because it's so frequently common. And I know in an era of extreme news cycles that's so instant on our phones and televisions, and we're bombarded with the worst news because that's what sells. Nobody wants to hear a good story. We want to be shocked. We want something to talk about as we drink our coffee and live in relatively safe havens, or so as we've constructed in our heads. But this is happening everywhere, and not just because of the easily obtainableness of guns. Even in Australia, we don't have guns, yet people still get run down by insane people. Because of the mental health system is one of the biggest issues. There's nowhere for these people to go, nor are they treated, unless they have insurance to do so. And the people that obviously need it are the ones that are probably below the poverty line, because the division between the haves and the have-nots is so ridiculously wide now. You're either born into it, or you're on the bottom of the pile. And if that's the case, then it's almost impossible now for you to scrape yourself out. This idea that you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps and become anything you want is no longer a reality for most of us, because they've put walls up and made sure that no one can have what they have, because they want all the money in the world. It's never enough. They've got more than enough to set themselves up, their family up, for 120 lifetimes. But it's never enough. They have to keep taking more and more of everything. They don't care how many people get gunned down, or people that go bankrupt, those who live in their cars in the Walmart parking lots, families that get torn apart, driven to alcoholism, people that get beaten because of their frustration and the unfairness of the life that was dealt out to them, the people that take lives of crime just to survive. They don't care. As far as they're concerned, they'll eat themselves and it's not a problem of theirs. It's almost like new monarchy, where some weird family declared themselves king because of bloodshed, and then raised this strange inbred family that seems to just get away with everything they want. You look at any kind of history of these sorts of people. They were atrocious people, they did atrocious things, and they did it with no understanding that what they're doing is absolutely insane. There's nothing fantastic or amazing about anyone who's a sociopath. If you watch a true crime documentary about someone who's a serial killer and is going out doing horrendous things, there is no difference between someone like that and someone who ruins someone's life just to make monetary gain. What is the difference? If someone's torturing someone and they're in pain, long-lasting pain, and they're scarred for the rest of their lives. In the same way, someone who has all their money taken, their house repossessed, living in a car, unable to feed their children. Torture, that's pain, that's suffering. And it's incredibly unfortunate that nothing is learned. And even the people that do want to do things in this world to make a difference and change things for the better, their arms have been cut off at the limbs, because nobody wants that kind of change, because it interferes with the profit margins. And that's what it comes down to. It's all about this making money. They profit off death and they profit off fear. And we all know this on a subliminal level. It doesn't take much to think about how ridiculously everyone's being played. Even if you're in denial, there's still a side of yourself, if you're conscious enough to stand upright and put clothes on and can speak a language, if you have enough of that cognitive skill. And I'm pretty sure there's a side of you that can see that this isn't right, that you're being lied to for the sake of profit. It's nothing to do with patriotism. It is about your rights, and it's definitely not you versus the government. And what annoys me the most is this always comes down to blaming whatever trend the youth are into, like it's the youth's problem. At the moment, video games seems to be the target once again, even though video games have really only been around since mid-80s. They were mass-produced. And strangely enough, violence has gone down, because I think a lot of people that have extreme bloodlust, I'm pretty sure that's a relief for them, to simulate a darker side, which most people have, and fulfill that fantasy in a non-consequential way. I think that's probably the best thing for you. And if you can't distinguish between a video game and reality, then that's a mental health issue altogether. And that person needs to be identified and treated for that reason. Nothing to do with a video game. But yet again, something needs to be blamed. It's always the youth that's the problem, even though the generation before are the ones that left this place into a dumpster fire, wipe their hands off it, go live on a mound of money like they're Scrooge McDuck. Video games is like the number one entertainment at the moment. It's become so mainstream that people play it on their phones. People that are not necessarily even people who play games. And not just puzzle games, that you can play shooting sniper games on your phone for free. So why isn't the world turned into The Purge? I've played video games ever since I was like a child. I've had a computer in my house, I've played Doom, played some pretty violent games. It's not necessarily the genre that I like, but it's never once provoked me to go out there and do this in real life. Nobody plays GTA and goes out and steals a car and runs someone down and then drives into the ocean. It's ridiculous. And again, if some individual does that, it's something psychological. It's something, it'd be a whole lot of issues, and it needs to be isolated by that distinct case. And nothing in this world can be answered by one distinct thing. It'd be a series of events that would make someone snap. It could be a birth defect, something that hasn't developed, just like a child that's born without limbs, or some sort of deformity of the gene. I think the same thing applies to a mental disability. I think some people are just born without emotion, without regret. They just go through life and they have no understanding that when they do something, they're hurting someone. And for some reason, this has become standard. We think these people are confident when they're driven by nothing but ego and a sense of self, without actually having to accomplish anything or do anything good, as long as they've developed it in their head and can convince others. So we have like a whole outbreak of people that are just no longer connected to reality, but living in this fictitious world that they're painting constantly. And the amount of energy that I think that they would have to do that would be astounding. I don't know why. It's like someone who lies all the time. It just seems like such ridiculous amounts of effort to keep that lie perpetuating. You have to keep constructing sides, and even when people call these people out about their lies that are so obvious, they go to great lengths to never admit to it. And I just don't understand why you keep fighting. Is reality that terrible? And it probably is. It's extremely unfair. Horrendous things have happened. You just have to open up a history book. It could be misinterpreted just like people misinterpret song lyrics. Just the way Charles Manson listened to the Beatles' White Album and considered them the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and did one of the most atrocious acts by convincing some hippies to go and kill Sharon Tate. It's all about manipulation. It's about people reaching their ends and trying to stay away from it as much as possible because they don't want to be outed for the terrible, horrendous persons that they are. But at the end of the day, it seems more and more likely that people don't even care anymore. When the mask comes off and they're revealed as this monster, everyone just shrugs their shoulders because we all kind of knew, and there's nothing we can do about it anymore. Because we don't want to risk our darker side of ourselves to be exposed. And it's horrible. It's horrible these things keep happening, and we all sit around and we group together and we talk about it, but nothing gets done. Because at the end of the day, we know there's nothing we can do, because they make so much money. They make so much money perpetuating fear, gassing us in constant fear. Commercials that make you feel inadequate, that don't feel like you're measuring up to the very small percentage of people that live these pristine lives. But even these people aren't happy. That's why tabloid magazines still read more than anything. It's because as much as we worship celebrities, we love to see them fall at the same time. We love to judge them and like to feel like they're not as perfect as we imagine. But at the same time, we dream of being these sorts of people because there's like an ideal that that's what we should strive to be. It's to disconnect yourself from your own personality. To understand that you have to work within your limitations. No matter how hard you work at something doesn't necessarily mean you'll be proficient at it. We all have strengths and weaknesses. I think you need to define through your own development what you're great at, accept that you can't do everything, and use those things as a tool to try and make this world just a better place for not only yourself to live in, but for others around you. And if you're doing something that in any way hinders others, even if it's a slight thing like you parked a car in a driveway and blocking people's pathway, this is an atrocious thing to do. I don't understand why anybody wants to be any kind of wall in front of someone else's progress. So there is no answer. There's nothing really we can do, and that's quite sad. But that just seems to be the way things are. I'd like to think that things could change. More likely they won't. More people will probably get killed for absolutely no reason. Innocent people just going about their day. And it's completely sad that these so-called people in charge that we voted in couldn't care less. So that's it for another week. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. I really do appreciate it. If you like this episode, then why not rate, subscribe, and like on the very device you're using with whatever application you're using to listen to this. Doing so really helps. It means more to me than anything. It helps this podcast become more visible to those who can't see it amongst a sea of like another billion podcasts. So if you really like what I'm doing, then just taking a little bit of time out, write a review, retweeting it, sending it out there on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And those that do it, I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much. It means the world to me. You can follow this podcast on Twitter and Facebook just by searching for Tales from the Mind Boat. The links, of course, are in the description of this exact episode. You can follow me on Instagram at Trav Nash Draws Things, and you can also follow me on Twitter at Nashtopia. The music for this podcast is composed by Tim Witt. You can listen to his music right now on SoundCloud just by searching for Tim Witt Sounds. You can also find his music on Bandcamp. You can buy 2 albums, which are fantastic, self-produced by him and some amazing musicians that he brought in. And you can pay what you want with these incredible albums. This episode was read and brought out from my head and produced, edited, copied, and pasted by me, Trav Nash, and you're welcome. So that's it for another week. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. I really do appreciate it. I hope it wasn't too rambly, but it's the way I feel. I don't know. It gets me down. That's the thing. I mean, you feel powerless to do anything. This is the best I can do, is maybe share some thoughts, look at things from a different perspective. But I'm not going to pretend to be optimistic that things are going to change when these things just constantly happen and there's no repercussions for it. But we go on. So anyway, I hope this week's better. I hope you have a good week and you're looking after yourself. You're good. Until next week, stay safe. And remember, you should always have a voice.